trust me, guys, I can fix it. I can fix this, okay? Like, I'll be honest with you. If there's a will, there's a way. Because you're not telling me that Capella isn't one of the most compelling characters within ReZero, at least for Season 3. So, I guess let's just dive headfirst into this. Every single scene that she is in is honestly the best scene of the episode. Like, there is legitimately great scenes within this episode. A lot of scenes I'm going to cover within this video. But the absolute body horror, accompanied with the voice acting, is just something that is so well done. And I honestly expected ReZero to censor this heavily. Because it is, to be completely fair, pushing aside memes or anything, it is grotesque. It is. And I'm not saying it should be censored. I've always advocated that, you know, this is completely fine. I'm just saying it is a very grotesque depiction of body horror. And Capella really is a character that represents just, like, how you can push the very boundaries and limits of what the sin of lust is. And I love her character. Her dynamic with the cast of characters that we have come to know and love has just been stellar. The performance of the voice actor, honestly, is way beyond most voice acting I have seen from anime for this year alone. I'm not counting previous years, but I'm just gonna say that, if there is any takeaway that you can take away from this episode, besides, like, obviously plot progression and different things like that, or great animated scenes, I would say that the voice acting for this week's episode of ReZero is easily the best aspect of it. Like, it is the best. Like, obviously, there is things that is still almost as good as it, but holy crap. I'm gonna be blunt here, okay? Capella within the anime has been so much better than her light novel, web novel equivalent. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I enjoyed Capella when I read the web novel for the first time and, like, read her scenes and stuff, and I enjoyed the gluttony stuff. But I wasn't, like, super, like, yo, this is insane. That was about it. I was just like, yo, this is kind of cool. This is cool because it's setting up for Saint Archbishops for the future. And, you know, seeing her voice actor and how she has just brought the character to life, it is just so beyond the original source that, honestly, I'm so happy about. Like, it's just, there's so many times to see from the actual ReZero community. I see the ReZero community, like, just, like, being the biggest haters for ReZero, which is kind of sad, honestly, and I don't see a lot of people really praising the stellar performance of these actors, these voice actors. Like, Capella is one standout character just within this season alone. Just her facial expressions, which that goes into the animators as well, and I will talk about that because that is important with the voice acting, but the character acting to the voice acting to the facial expressions, the music tone as well, it really brings this scene to life to such a higher level than what you would get from the original source, aka the web novel or light novel, and that's typically how it should be. I've made this argument a lot, but the thing is that typically when you have an anime adaptation, it's not as good as its original source. And most of the time it makes sense why. Either it's based on a manga, which usually a manga panel looks just insane, because obviously an author/artist can dedicate, like, weeks of time to just one certain panel, and obviously it will never be to the same level as, like, an anime. For instance, the anime would never be able to compete with the quality of the artwork. But, we also have stuff with light novels and web novels when it comes to the writing as well. You know, what you think of or imagine within your own mind when you're reading something typically will triumph over anything that is officially made. It's why a lot of people, when they think of, like, don't take this as criticism, but it's like when a lot of people think of, let's say, VTubers, you know, they want to keep the illusion of what a VTuber looks like. They think a VTuber looks like a VTuber, and they don't want to really think about what they truly look like behind the scenes. Even if they look very similar to their avatar, people just want to imagine them as their avatar. And so it's the illusion and everything about that that really adds a layer to it, and I love what this series has done with it. Like, it is definitely beyond the illusion and what your mind can process for how you felt about Capella within the light novel and web novel. And that's where this, you know, these episodes have really been shining, honestly. The Capella scene, every single Capella scene has actually just been something that has made me just take a moment and process just how insane it is. Because memes and jokes aside, talking about grippers, or talking about fan service, talking about, you know, oh, I can fix her, I can't fix her, I want to make her worse, let her make me worse, all that different type of memes and stuff. she is a good character, and I think she has just been brought to life into such a great way that I think she's probably going to become everybody's favorite character. At least when it comes to this season, I think she's giving off the same tone and energy that Juice gave in season 1 of ReZero. Like, for instance, this season, technically, season 3 of ReZero, if we really want to factor in who the big bad was, it's technically Regulus. I mean, he's already defeated, yeah, but I mean, Regulus was the big bad because obviously that was the main opponent that Natsuki Subaru was facing. And the fact that he is getting kind of overshadowed by others, like for instance, like Sirius or Capella, I think is pretty funny. It's funny, but it also shows that the love that's given to these certain archbishops, and in this case, Capella is definitely one that stands out. Now, let's get into the character acting and the animation of her, and why I think it's just so beyond the original source. So Capella in general is just such a great character because her expressions, like, look at this, okay? This is a very subtle thing, but the overall formation of her body, looking past the body horror, I love how she's able to get across this very depraved, degenerate tone out of her, this cutesy tone that really is such an abomination, because, like, the way her voice acting comes off, she acts like a very cutesy character. She's a voice actor in a voice you would expect from a slice-of-life moe anime, with some comedy thrown in, but hearing that tone of voice, with the way her character is animated, is just super jarring, and it works so well, and I think that the animators being able to not just, like, bring to life the character in animation, but match the same energy as the voice actors is incredible. And it is a very rare thing to see, like, the culmination of all these ingredients come together and actually just make an absolute gourmet meal. Because typically, there's always, like, some friction between the voice acting, the animation, the art, and the music. But in this case, I don't think there really is any friction. Even the backgrounds to the lighting and all that, it's pretty stand out. And I think that is why I really just, when I look at this episode and these scenes, it's just some of the best stuff, the best content ReZero has technically ever had. Another thing, too, is that the facial expressions has always been the strongest aspect of ReZero. I've always thought that. It's always been, like, tied with, like, the facial expressions and the voice acting. I've always had those back-to-back competing in my head every time I have sat down and watched ReZero over these years since it first came out in 2016. And I love that despite all these years, almost a decade since ReZero Season 1 came out, we still have just such iconic expressions from these characters that really will stick with you. You could feel that the artists that were drawing these characters, they did everything they could in their power to give off the tone and vibe that these characters should give off. And it might sound simplistic by the way I'm wording it, but there is so much more nuance and detail that is put into these scenes that a lot of people just easily overlook. And obviously when I'm talking about the subject, I'm not just talking about Capella, I'm talking about, like, Gluttony's scenes within this episode, Julius's scenes within this episode. The character expressions have just been so on point, especially in Season 3, that I can't help but just be reminded of why I fell in love with this series in the first place. It's why I enjoy anime. It's why I love watching anime. Being able to sit down and really just, not just enjoy an entertaining show, but to analyze it and come away from it and be like, man, what they just did was above and beyond anything they needed to do, but they did it anyways, because they love what they're doing. These animators love their work, and they want to give the audience, the fans, exactly what they want, and that is what they have been doing, which is what makes me sad when I see just so much negativity around the series. And don't get me wrong, criticism is fine. Completely fair. There's nothing wrong with critiquing ReZero. That is fair. ReZero isn't perfect, okay? I'm not gonna, kid myself. But I think that sometimes a lot of criticism comes overbearing, and it's just too much criticism when I feel like it's not really that big of a deal. In fact, if we're going to talk about any criticism, which I guess we could finally segue into that, it would probably be the bad translations, actually, from Crunchyroll. So there is literally a scene within this episode with Gluttony and Otto and stuff, and Julius and all them, where, there is wrong words, wrong names that are said, and let's just get right into that. So, Crunchyroll has been notorious for the last, is this the 15th episode or 14th? I think this is the 14th. This is the 14th episode in a row that Crunchyroll has had a bad translation to some degree for ReZero. And I don't want to repeat myself of what I have been saying for a while, but, people have been fired for less. There is people that are fired for literally no reason, for different jobs in different job career fields, for less. But if you're able to continuously make a mistake to this degree, 14 weeks in a row, 14 episodes in a row, typically a person like that should be fired. I understand, I don't like to see people lose their jobs, but at the end of the day, your job is to translate an anime. That's why people pay Crunchyroll. That's why. That's just the fundamental thing. When you give money to Crunchyroll, your one of your big expectations is that the anime is presented to you as it should be. For instance, with a proper translation, not something that is inaccurate into a large degree. And in this case, Crunchyroll has continuously done that. And it's been clear for the past few weeks that they've kind of started to acknowledge the issues, but they still have not made an official statement. And people have clarified that they're probably not even using AI for this, because someone ran some of the issues with this episode through the translator, and the Google Translate actually got it correct in comparison to what Crunchyroll did here. So it showcases that Crunchyroll is probably not using AI. It's just someone that just does not care. They do not care about the product of ReZero. Which, let's get into the actual mistranslation. What did they mistranslate? So there is a scene here where Gluttony is basically revealing their powers, and they start, you know, reminiscing on memories that are not their own, kind of revealing that Gluttony operates where when he consumes someone's name and memories, Gluttony can use those name and memories and techniques for their own. That is what is established within this episode. If you put the details together, you come to that conclusion. Even Otto himself came to that conclusion within this episode. And so Gluttony spouting off different information, stuff that obviously is a character's history, is pretty jarring and scary, which gets into the great voice acting stuff, which I've already talked about, so I'm not going to get back into that. But the thing is the translation says, like, Mary. And someone brought up that the mistranslation was actually within the light novel. The Yin Press translation was in the light novel. So, the mistake that Crunchyroll made this week wasn't necessarily a Crunchyroll mistake. I mean, it is their mistake for allowing this to happen after years of criticism for that mistranslation, but Crunchyroll did use the translation from Yin Press for this episode. So, fundamentally, if we want to talk about the origin point of why there was a mistranslation, it goes back to Yin Press. Here's the proof, here's the picture, you can pause the video and read it for yourself. But basically, Meili was supposed to be name-dropped in this episode. If you don't know who that is, it's not a spoiler, because it's supposed to be a name that's revealed, and you're supposed to be able to connect the dots. I mean, you even hear the character say it, so it's not a spoiler. Meili is the girl, the little girl, at the end of Season 2. That was with Elsa, the one controlling Maw Beast. That is the name. That's who it is, okay? It was obvious. It's not a spoiler. It was supposed to be like that. But the names that were translated was called Mary for her, which makes no sense whatsoever. And obviously, this is going to lead to a lot of confusion. People are going to be like, who is this? Who's this Mary and all that? Is this a character I should care about? Is this a character I should recognize? When in fact, this is just a new character that has been created thanks to a mistranslation, an improper translation. So it's pretty bad. Honestly, this translation that Crunchyroll did is not good, but Yin Press is the originer, like the origin point of this. They're the one that started it all. But it is a shame that Crunchyroll obviously didn't do their homework. It showcases the lack of homework and commitment to the project. The fact that they used a translation that was already scrutinized for years. This isn't something that just came out a few months ago. This is a translation that was scrutinized years ago. So it's bad. It's pretty bad that Crunchyroll did this. But yeah, once again, more confusion for ReZero anime onlys. It just, you gotta love it, man. You know they're not gonna fix it. They're not gonna fix it. They won't. They don't typically fix their mistakes. So yeah, this is just gonna lead to more confusion. And it's so bad because, I mean, I think half the time, Crunchyroll does more damage to ReZero than anyone else could. And once again, more damage, because this is just going to confuse things in the future, and it upsets me a little bit. With that being said, though, I guess let's talk about the Capella fight with Al, because I think that, in general, it is such a good fight that hints at a lot of things that are pretty sus. So, let's get into that. So the Capella and Al fight is pretty interesting, with a lot of foreshadowing and little hints here and there dropped within it. For one, there is a lot of things that Al says within the fight, and within his, actual conversation with Anastasia as well, where he just says things that he shouldn't necessarily know. For instance, getting into the Capella fight, he talks about death, that like, oh, it'd take 100 deaths. He talks about like, oh, you don't want to die and all that, it's not really good, you want your first time to be special and stuff, kind of mocking Capella. But it's like the way he comes off, the way he talks about these things is something that seems like someone is aware of death, and might even be aware of return by death, aka Natsuki Subaru's authority. It really does make you wonder, because like, why is he talking about stuff like this to such a degree that feels eerily similar to how Subaru is within the story? But it doesn't just stop there. We also have the stuff with Anastasia, which you see in this scene right here, where Anastasia uses magic that Al's like, wait, magic? Anastasia should not be able to use that type of magic. And upon this, he literally just draws his sword at her. He points it right at her, and instantly in this moment, a lot of anime onlys, a lot of people watching this are going to think to themselves, he's probably doing this thinking it might be Capella, because obviously Capella can shapeshift. We know this. She turns into other people. And so he might assume maybe it's Capella or something, or an imposter of Capella. It could be whatever. So that's why he draws the sword. At least that's the conclusion people come to. But the entire scene is very shady as well, because it's quickly dropped as soon as Capella arrives and does her whole body horror scene. But Al says things that he shouldn't necessarily be aware of as well. He's like, you don't have that type of magic. Anastasia, doesn't use magic like that. Like, what's going on here? And it's like, how would he know this? Because he doesn't work for Anastasia. He works for Priscilla. He literally serves Priscilla. He's not involved with Anastasia, so how would he be aware of that? It just doesn't seem like he is necessarily a spy. Like, Al doesn't give off the impression he's a really good spy. So, how would he know these things? It really does make you wonder. So, whatever's going on with Anastasia is pretty weird. It makes you wonder what is being hinted at there. Now, with that, we move into the Julius stuff. So the last thing I want to talk about is Julius' scene, and how you see cracks forming. Beginnings of character development with him. And that is the fact that is very fascinating, because he's a character that has a lot of history with Natsuki Subaru, our protagonist within the story. We know that Julius is this proud knight. He comes off as a knight, someone that is all about knighthood first. That is the first thing that he thinks of over anything else. And you see this entire fight sequence with Gluttony. Gluttony gets under his skin. It's very obvious. And this scene is basically scene for scene similar to Natsuki Subaru when he bites his lip. And it's clear that Julius is doing the exact same thing, showcasing that he isn't this honorable, perfect knight that he has been presented as since the beginning of the story. There is cracks within his armor. He is not like a completely full body armor knight. There is weak points, and obviously we see that. And obviously this episode confirms that Gluttony, took Julius's brother, for instance, consumed his name and everything, and is using those memories to get underneath Julius's skin. And Julius isn't fully aware of what's going on, but he knows something's going on, and it's bugging him greatly. So I like this episode. I like the character interactions and what it's really setting up here for Julius, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen to him. Is something bad really about to happen to him? Because obviously he has a lot of history with Subaru. So we shall see. But I'll leave it at that, though. I mean, we have the conclusion of the episode, which I can talk about, which is Beatrice and Otto going up against Gluttony. That is basically acting like Rim. Wild stuff, like really wild. But we'll save that for next episode. But yeah, that is rezero this week. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. Chibi out.